Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing this Friday. It's the day after a 1-1 draw in Denmark with Brondby, which keeps Rangers third in Group A in the Europa League ahead of what will be a really big game against Sparta Prague later in this month. Joined by Jonny McFarlane to dissect what was a strange game in many ways, Jonny, but turned out to be quite a positive. And I guess it all comes back to that defining moment on 56 minutes when Steven Gerrard, for the first time I can remember in a competitive game, making 3 substitutions on 55 minutes. What did you make of the game overall?
Just on that substitution, I think you described it perfectly in your colour piece after the game. A fundamental change to the game. Overall, I don't think Rangers were very good last night, being honest. They didn't have that kind of spark that we've discussed so many times this season. But at the same time, they were almost in total control of the game until a bizarre own goal. I mean, it's almost a reflexive action by Leon Balogun, who otherwise was brilliant, I thought, throughout the game. He just sticks his head out. He doesn't expect the Brondby player to flick the ball on, and he's trying to clear it and just misjudges it. But apart from that, I mean, how many chances did Brondby actually have? Alan McGregor didn't really have a save to make. I was doing the man-by-man last night. It was really, really difficult to give McGregor a score because he wasn't really contributing to the game. It was one of those 2 medium blocks going against each other, Joshua. You know what I mean? It was just a midfield battle, effectively. That much of the play was concentrated around a sort of broken game state, without sounding too pretentious about it. There wasn't a lot of clear-cut chances for either side. Rangers had the better of those chances. What I would say is that you've got to give credit to the manager because he made a radical change. It was absolutely needed. But he went out there and did it. And sometimes these things come off for you and sometimes they don't. But it definitely came off for him last night. And Ryan Kent added a completely different level of threat. I thought Ianis Hagi looked really, really positive. A wonderful finish for his goal as well. And I think it'll bring about major discussion and major questions about the strike trio for the next game because personally, I thought Fashion Sakala was actually okay in the game. He worked his backside off. Not a lot came off for him, but you can't fault him for effort. The guy never stops. He had a couple of nice moments, lovely sort of step over, which bamboozled. I can't remember the Brondby player's name now. Is it Truss or Tuss? Anyway, Boos. Something like that. The right back. And he was pretty good, I thought. 6 out of 10 type performance. Alfredo Morelos, you know I've been complaining about Alfredo for quite a long time on this video. It's becoming something of a meme, me coming on here and complaining about Alfredo, but I just think he's not moving around the pitch enough. He's not the Alfredo of old, we all know that. But in terms of just pure effort, there was a moment where Leon Balogun got himself into trouble, sort of bringing the ball out. Brondby were on him, pressed him very, very quickly. And he managed to dribble out to the byline. And Alex Ray absolutely slaughtered Morelos for not making a run across into space because Balogun still had control of the ball enough to put a ball over the top. And Morelos just didn't make the run for him. Now, we couldn't see it. I was watching it on the telly like you. And you couldn't see it from where I was positioned, the lack of movement. But what I can say is Ray made a point of it. And I just thought generally throughout the game, he wasn't offering enough for his teammates. And that's been a consistent issue for me this season. His goal-scoring ratio is poor for a Rangers centre-forward. And I think he needs a spell of 3 or 4 games on the sidelines to consider what he's doing to his career. If Rangers sold Alfredo Morelos tomorrow, if there was a buyer, which I'm not sure there would be many people queuing up, considering they only had 1 bid when he was absolutely on fire and bullying the Europa League that we know about. It's a sort of acceptable bid anyway. I don't think Rangers would be getting much more than about 5, 6, 7 million for this incarnation of Alfredo Morelos. Honestly, and that might upset a few people. He is nowhere near the level of potential that he has. He's coming into his peak years. I mean, Alfredo Morelos has everything in his locker to be a £25 million striker. And we've seen that before. So it's a real conundrum and a real issue for the Rangers coaching staff. Now, you might disagree with me. I don't know. I think you're a lot more positive about Alfredo Morelos this season than I am.
I didn't think he was I think he was very good last night. I think it's. I was actually reading a piece about Conte on the Athletic, and it was talking about his analysis of Kane in the summer, and he was speaking about I think it was when he was doing punditry, and obviously it was drawing parallels with now him working with Kane, and it was speaking about how he said, "Look, Harry Kane's doing great work around the out the box, but effectively, if I was to work with him, I'd just pick him up and put him in the box more. He needs to get into the box more." And you've said as much about Morelos as well, and it's always a difficult one to try and see behind almost, because you imagine if Gerrard wasn't happy with him, presumably he wouldn't play him. But equally, maybe they're trying to play him into form. I mean, I think he's had a handful of really good games. I thought Ross County away and Hibs were quite complete performances in the way that he created space and then was able to add a goal onto that. I think sometimes he's a victim of his own evolution in the way that he does create a lot of space, but perhaps isn't always given credit for that. But I do agree with you that I think it's hard to look at games like last night and think that is, him at his very best, or him at his maximum effort levels. It's funny as well because time out the team can help. You look at Ryan Kent before his injury. I know it was an enforced absence, but Kent was having a really poor spell. It had a really poor start to the season. But all that gets forgotten about over a couple of weeks when you realise the importance of a player. So absolutely, I agree with you on that one, Jonny. And I think if it was my decision, I think I'd definitely start Kemar Roofe through the middle on Sunday. I think you know what you're going to get with Roofe. It's pretty guaranteed. And I think with Morelos, it's just not quite been there this season. But it's a tricky one to solve, because equally, I guess in the management staff's mind, they've got a player who's out of contract, I think, in 18 months, who, as you say, had such a high valuation, but and they need to get him back to that. This is almost a club-wide issue, as Gary Carmody written on the site for us before. So I don't disagree with you. I didn't think he was great last night. I thought Fashion Sakala did okay. I think what really impacted the game as well was their yellow cards, because that impacted the aggression that they could put into their press. I thought there was a few moments early on when Fashion Sakala, his pressing was really intelligent, and by curving his runs, he manipulated play and field. And if you look back to the chance that he has, Stephen Davis steals the ball, it's played through the lines quickly, and that was the kind of epitome, I think, of what Gerrard wanted from the game. And I think once those two yellow cards happen, and the Fashion Sakala decision by the referee is one of these decisions that's just stupid, and it really impacts the game, because Sakala then can't follow through on pressure for fear of getting sent off.
And actually, Sakala made a worse challenge not long after that he wasn't booked for, thankfully, because he's lunged in. It was certainly more of a booking than the first one. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into comments in a minute, but first let's talk about that second half. Sorry, the first half, Jonny, because it kind of, as you say, it played out with Rangers not uncomfortable. The XG for Brondby was 0.21. But again, the themes conceding first, and as Blair Newman had written on the site yesterday, a weakness from set pieces sees Rangers go behind. Yeah, and I thought Rangers looked shaky when the ball was put in the box. And I would say that despite also caveating it by asserting that Balogun and Connor Goldson, I thought, played excellently throughout the game.
I thought they were good.
It wasn't really a central defensive issue. I felt like there was other players who perhaps weren't doing their jobs as well as they could have. There needs to be work done there. There's no doubt about it, because Rangers have always looked really, really solid under this management team. But something's going a little bit awry. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or if there's something structural there that needs to be looked at. That's for greater football minds than me. But as Blair pointed out in his piece, there's certainly a running theme of goals conceded by set pieces. And that's not a good situation when you think how crucial they are in the modern game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. David getting in touch saying he doesn't think Morelos looks like himself. Callum asking, saying we should have won effectively. Gary Gray, speaking about the 3-5-2 and the issues Rangers have with that. I think Rangers played well against it for those 15 minutes when they were able to kind of set press and traps inside, but that didn't work after. The change on 55 minutes, Jonny, was pretty fundamental. I think the frustration from that point, certainly as an onlooker, was that Brondby weren't very good. Plain and simply, they're not. But they hadn't scored a goal. They've only scored now through an own goal in the Europa League. They're 30th out of 32 teams before kickoff in the XG difference table in terms of chances created and conceded. Despite having a lot of the ball and being at home, they created an XG of 0.21 against Rangers. Rangers have beaten much better teams in European games. And I think if you watch Steven Gerrard's pre-match interview, pitch side, firstly, it looked like it was a game he was desperate to play in because he was just, almost jumping about with excitement and confidence in his team. But he was evidently very confident that this is a game that will suit the team, playing in the mid zone, being aggressive, and it didn't. But he changed it with 3 subs in 55 minutes, and I think that's just excellent management to be able to rip up your script like that and see the new one work.
Yeah, can I just go back to? I'll touch on that in a minute, but going back to the person who was talking about the 3-5-2, I think the 3-5-2 is really causing Rangers problems because it just encourages the switch of play. You've always got that extra man over on the other side. And I think teams recognise now that tactically switches a player what disrupt and unsettle Rangers and gives you space. So I think that's part of it. And it's something that, again, I don't know if that's a structural issue, Joshua, that's just going to be the case. It's just because they've got an extra man over that allows them to pin somebody to the other side of the pitch, which makes it easier for these kind of switch of play. Or if there's something that can be done about that in the training field, I'm not sure.
In terms of Malmo did it as well, didn't they?
Malmo did it as well,
and Slavia Prague. And I think sometimes these issues, if you look at those goals, the spacing in the midfield, it's all about obviously keeping the centre compact, as we know, but the spacing in the midfield, if that's 5 yards wider, perhaps makes the distances that need to be covered a little bit easier. I thought Rangers as well at points in the first half actually had a man over. And I guess the positive is if you can push the wing backs back, you can win that battle. Then you can turn them into a back five. But you're right, I think it's when you don't match up the system and when you are narrow, there's always that outball, and I think that's Rangers do need to have almost more of a plan B against it. Leon did it as well. Peter Bosz said after the game that was effectively told the media that was what I told my team to do at halftime. So I'm in agreement with you there.
Yeah, I mean, I would caveat, I suppose, by saying that we were both agreed that Rangers weren't really threatened by Brondby throughout the game. So Gerrard might well say, well, they didn't make it work for them. They might have made it work in phases of play here and there, but overall they didn't get at us really. But in terms of the tactical change, Steven Gerrard's had a bit of criticism about substitutions, Joshua, and I thought that was decisive at the right time and absolutely what was needed and done. Kent just brought Rangers' attack alive, and we saw a lot of criticism for him in the games up to the point when he got injured. But there's no doubt, and even when Ryan Kent's playing badly, even when he's not at his best, which is very, very, very good indeed, probably too good to be playing in the Scottish Premiership, to be honest, he comes on and he just changes the game. It's the quality he has. So that made a big difference. I thought Kemar Roof didn't really make a huge impact on the game, but had the odd little touch, and obviously Ianis Hagi, great finish. So that trio certainly brought Rangers back to life and gave them an impetus to get back in the game.
Mm-hmm. And obviously it wasn't just the front three that changed from that. It was a midfield three as well, and it was completely different midfield three and front three from the start of the game. At the end of the game with Bacuna there, Kamara moved deeper, and I thought he was really good there. He sped up the play. Joe Aribo moved into that deeper position, and if you look at the lead up to the goal, it shows the benefit of phases of play and patterns of play, because it's something Rangers use regularly, where Tavernier hits the second man with the ball instead of the first. Kent recognises that, and that allows him to start running as Tavernier plays the ball, which means he can break through. And it's all these little fine margins that a well-coached team will benefit from, with almost synchronized movements that allows him to burst through. And I think all game you've just been asking for someone to run at the heart of Brondby and commit them. And the run from Hagi is really intelligent, and that's as good an indication as anything, is two-footedness, because the way he swivels on that and manages to find the far corner was really impressive. And to that point, Rangers could have won the game. You had a few late flurries. Roof, I think, makes a poor late decision when he's got three men in the box, but that tries to cut it in the near post or something. Rangers have a header with the Rebo right to death. Calvin Bassey has a chance at the front post right from where Balogun put the ball into his own net, which would have been nice and symmetrical. But I guess finally on the game, Jonny, it sets up a huge game against Sparta Prague later this month at Ibrox, doesn't it?
It does. 2 clear goals. I think people are saying that is going to be what's required, but listen, a lot can happen. I find a lot of this quite tiresome, the sort of ifs, buts, and maybes with 2 games still to go. I mean, anything can happen, So you don't know how that final game's going to go, but certainly, if I suppose if Rangers want it in their own hands, that's what they'll need to do.
They've won away in Lyon before, haven't they?
They have. Listen, and Lyon by that time, and this is the crucial thing, Lyon could be, youth team time. They're not going to want to be risking injury and stuff like that in that final game. But I suppose, they're still a very, very good team with high quality players, so they'll still be difficult. But I don't think that Lyon tie, that final game, is quite the tie people think it is, because they've been so good in this league and because they've romped ahead. Yep. So I suppose what I'm saying is if Rangers win 1-0 or draw, I still don't think necessarily it's over. They'll be in a difficult position, but we'll find out basically based on the results. I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if Sparta and Brondby draw. It's just that kind of group, isn't it? There's not much between the teams, and there's narrow margins at play here.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll touch finally on the annual report and accounts, Jonny, that I think it was this morning they were released by the club. We'll just get your reaction to the detail, I guess, and a little bit of analysis on what's in the report.
Yeah, well, forgive me, I've got my notes here because I've just had a quick look at them this morning, but obviously a 23.5 million loss up until June 2021. That's up 8 million on last year, with revenue taking a massive hit, as you would expect from COVID. That's down 13 million pounds. So really, really shows you the impact. And the club kind of break that down in a little bit more detail by saying the impact on revenue, the total impact of this virus on fans not being able to attend, on all those other aspects that impact the club, is 20 million pounds, which, when you're in the Scottish Premiership where you don't have monstrous TV revenues, that's a huge amount. Impact on profitability around 10 million. So I think they'd have been expecting maybe around 13 million normally, 13 and a half if it wasn't for COVID. But that's the kind of effect that we're talking about. And, that's going to have to be, plugged by investors and directors, and Rangers have got people who are willing to do that, who are committed to doing that, who are committed to paying off the transfer fees that are still outstanding for players that have been bought through the process of Rangers rebuild. They've still put £17 million into the squad last year, and £5 million has been spent on Ibrox and Edmiston House. So I think everything needs to be put into context, and there's a lot going on at Rangers. There's a lot being spent, and there's a lot being done to reach that 55. And the board is comprised of supporters. So they've made an extra effort. They've gone the extra mile. I mean, these results are not good, tangent on the face of it. But underneath that, there is more detail to be assessed. And I think the key thing is the board are saying at the end of the accounts, they believe that in 21-22, the funding requirements to keep the club going next season will be 7.5 million that's for this season, 21-22, but next season in terms of the accounts. And then in 22-23, only 0.4 million. So it looks like, as part of this 10-year plan that was put in place by the board when they came in the door, that Rangers will be reaching a position of washing their face by 22-23, 23-24, as it currently stands. But perhaps these figures are also a bit of a warning about what to expect for transfer windows and things like that. Rangers are not going to be going out and spending large sums of money, because simply put, if they were to go out and spend £7-8 million on a player, it would be coming out of an investor's pocket. The way it stands at the moment, Rangers are still needing funding to bridge a gap for next season. So I think perhaps, although there may well be finances available, I think we're now at a stage in terms of the actual first team that there'd have to be a bit of wheeling and dealing in terms of players going out, players coming in to balance the books.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great. Okay. Well, and we will be back on a Monday, Jonny, to speak through the Ross County game on Sunday, which I'll be at. There'll be plenty of reaction to that, and then it's the international break again. Yet I remind you,
God, another one.
You'll keep me going. I won't be here, but
you're away.
I'm away, but yourself and Derek will keep our good supporters going through it. Remember, folks, to subscribe to the Rangers Review for top quality journalism covering the club you love every single day. Just $2.99 a month. It's a great deal. And be sure to check out all the content we've already produced over there. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And until Monday, enjoy the rest of your weekend.